Welcome to another Thailand News Today as we bring you all the bits and pieces happening around Thailand. Well, today, just because of the way it is, there's going to be quite a lot of news about the protests. We're going to cover a lot of the background to today's protests, and then at the end of the bulletin we'll bring you all the latest news from the protest site. So let's get started on today's news. Well, as they've done before, the protesters have shown their ability to move quite fast and pivot the location of their protests. And so it is today, where they've moved the location of the protest to the headquarters of the Siam Commercial Bank. When protesters heard about a counter-rally to meet and challenge them at the scheduled Crown Property building, they decided to switch locations to the SCB headquarters around 10:30 p.m. last night. Siam Commercial Bank is a Thai bank that was set up under the auspices of the Crown Property Bureau and Thailand's oldest bank. Thailand's King Maha Vajiralongkorn is still the largest single shareholder, owning 23.35% of SCB shares. In the lead up to today's protest, there was a warning from the police and the government to stay away from the Crown Property Bureau. Demonstrators would have been required to stay at least 150 metres away from the building in Phitsanulok Road. A record 6,000 police have been mobilised to handle the expected large crowds. Additional police were shipped in from the provinces to bolster security for today's rally. Army reinforcements have also been called in today, according to an army spokesperson. The anti-government protest groups have also brought in their own unarmed security force of some 50 people, calling themselves Special Services. The Deputy PM Prawit Wongsuwon also warned royalist groups to avoid mounting a counter-demonstration against the planned anti-government rally today. Meanwhile, with almost impeccable timing, some 12 pro-democracy demonstrators have been issued summons to hear charges of lèse majesté. The Section 12 law covers insulting, defaming or threatening the Thai monarchy. Anyone convicted on lèse majesté charges faces imprisonment of between 3 and 15 years. In June this year, the Thai PM announced that His Majesty the King had asked the government not to impose the country's lèse majesté laws. And an ironic footnote to all today's activity is that one of the key protesters has also been named by the BBC as one of the world's 100 most inspiring and influential women of 2020. Thai pro-democracy activist Phitsanulok, also known as Rung, has been singled out in the list of women around the world who are driving change in challenging times. Phitsanulok is one of 3 Thai women to be listed. As the leader of the protest group, the United Front of Thammasat and Demonstration, she came to international attention at a Bangkok rally in August when she read out the group's controversial 10-point manifesto calling for reform of the monarchy, a taboo topic never before publicly discussed. We'll have the latest information about what's happening at today's protests at the end of this bulletin. A monk has died after jumping onto the tracks into the front of an oncoming train in the northeastern province of Sisaket on the Cambodian border. The incident occurred at a provincial train station in front of horrified witnesses yesterday morning. Witnesses report that he jumped onto the tracks and stood with his arms open in the path of an oncoming train. Thai health officials are calling for a total ban on smoking in residential buildings that includes condominiums, hotels and dormitories. Those campaigning for a change in the law say it's needed to protect the health of residents and children in particular. The Health Laws and Ethics Centre at Thammasat University says residential buildings should be smoke-free in order to protect residents from second-hand smoke. He was speaking at a seminar for the protection of non-smoking condo residents. According to recent surveys, only 15% say they're still smokers, but 89% of respondents were in support of a total ban on smoking in condominiums. Qantas, Australia's national airline, has been the first of what will probably be an international stipulation for passengers to have had a COVID-19 vaccination once it becomes available. Qantas CEO Alan Joyce says the Australian flag carrier would implement the measure once a coronavirus vaccine was made available to the public. He said, "For international visitors coming to Australia and people leaving the country, we think that it's a necessity." Joyce also said that the new rule is likely to become a standard practice by all airlines worldwide, as many governments are now working to introduce electronic vaccination passports. Now, just before we go, the latest on today's protests. As of 5 p.m. this afternoon, some 2,000 to 3,000 people remain assembled out the front of the Siam Commercial Bank building after moving their protest late last night. At this stage, there doesn't appear to be a lot of police or security presence, just a lot of different sound stages, with protesters making their demands in an otherwise peaceful and festive mood. Well, a very busy day indeed around the country as we try and bring you a snapshot of what's happening around Thailand. We appreciate you joining us every day on Thailand News Today. Please don't forget to subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.